Throughout time, there have been many games humans have speedrun. Nowadays, many people prefer to speedrun small sections of games rather than the full game itself. This is definitely the case for Doomfist Parkour Blizzard World by Sky, Level 1. A small subsection of a small subsection of a small subsection of the popular first-person shooter Overwatch. It has a small cult following in the speedrun community, but many say it is one of the most entertaining speedruns out there. The level serves as an introduction to Doomfist mechanics, and thus is very forgiving to an average player, with multiple ways to complete each checkpoint. When it comes to speedrunning though, the strats are hard and unforgiving, and the room for error, small. Despite the small player base, the competition is fierce, and no one holds a record for very long. The run has come a long way from its infancy, going from a fast playthrough of the level to a brutal test of timing, precision, and determination. This is the history of Doomfist Parkour, Blizzard World, Level 1, Speedrunning. The first known speedruns for this level are not very impressive by today's standards. In November of 2017, runner MasterCube uploaded the first known footage of a speedrun of the level, getting a then impressive time of 23.84 seconds. The run is essentially a fast playthrough of the level, with no real skips or tricks performed, except for an early version of a trick he called Hide Skip or HS on the first checkpoint. Additionally, the run lost a considerable amount of time from fully charged up punches. When it comes to fast movement as Doomfist, players must only tap the charge punch button and hold down jump to gain almost the maximum distance and speed for a punch. This is what's called a jump punch, and 99% of the time, it is the most optimal way to move. At this point in time, MasterCube was the only real runner of the level, and since his time was so improvable, it wouldn't be long until he beat it. Just 7 days later, he would come out with a time of 22.7 seconds flat. Outside of some slightly cleaner movement and routing, MasterCube used a trick on the 10th checkpoint where he uppercut directly into the corner of a roof, which launched him straight into the next checkpoint, skipping the large height boost an uppercut would normally give. He called this trick Height Skip 2, or HS2 for short. This saved about half a second compared to the old method, factoring in the small time it took to set up the trick. Over the next few weeks, MasterCube would lower his time to 21.90, using a new method on the 8th checkpoint he called Ultimate Rock Bounce, or URB, which involved jump punching off a rock on the left-hand side to minimize distance traveled, and saved about 0.2 seconds. Not long after, he would get a 21.28 by cleaning up movement and not charging his punches for as long. He started to wonder if sub 20 was achievable. While he was grinding his time down, a new runner emerged, SpideXE. Obviously, he wasn't competition for MasterCube at this point as he had just started running, but MasterCube helped teach him some of the strats he knew and watched him improve very fast. Despite his side job as a tutor, MasterCube was getting very close to sub 20, getting this run. With no new strats or tricks, the current route was being pushed to its limits, with the 2048 having no real significant time saves. The only way it was going to happen was if Cube could find a new trick. So he analysed the route and looked for places where time could be saved. He noticed that checkpoint 9 was a very slow checkpoint and realised it could be completed with a precise jump punch followed by a well-timed slam, skipping the uppercut he previously would use, and saving a full second of time. Using this strat, which he called Cutlass, on January 13, 2018, MasterCube achieved this run. he had done it. By 0.02 seconds, the world's first sub 20 second run had been achieved, but MaskCube was not done there, and neither was SpideXE. In the month that had passed between SpideXE beginning to run the level and MaskCube getting the sub 20, he'd improved to the point of being just over 3 seconds behind Cube, with a PB of 23.25 seconds. By the time MaskCube improved the world record to a 1974, SpideXE was less than a second behind, with a PB of 2067. However, this is still a considerable gap. 1 second is a lot of time in a run as short as this. MaskCube would soon find a new strat which he called Over the Roof, or OTR for short, which saved about 0.1 to 0.2 seconds. On the 5th checkpoint, he would aim his punch just next to the edge of the roof, so he would move into the narrow gap between the roof and the wall, and could slam down to the checkpoint between that gap. This got to the checkpoint in the least possible distance, but was quite precise and easy to mess up. He used the strat in his 19.49 run.
Doesn't make sense.
Oh my god, yes.
What?
That was just like, that was almost perfect. But when he improved that to a 1914.
No.
Oh, there it is. And that could have been so much. You can see that he dropped the strat for a wider angle, losing a bit of time. He more than made up for this time loss, however, with cleaner movement and a slightly faster HS2 setup. Aiming for a sub 19 second time, Cube decided to pick up OTR again, and started grinding. It only took 3 days until he got this run.
Oh yes.
Fuck yes. An 1882, a very comfortable sub 19. Outside of OTR, he also had slightly cleaner movement, a slightly faster HS, and once again a faster HS2 setup. Cube was able to retain his 1 second lead over SpideXE, who now had a 19.9 PB. That was until, seemingly out of nowhere, SpideXE got this run. And just like that, SpideXE now had a serious chance of taking the world record, being just over 0.4 seconds behind. He had overall slightly slower movement than MaskCube still, mainly due to charging his punches for longer, but saved about 0.3 seconds in an almost instant HS2 setup. Cube, clearly being intimidated by this run, decided he was not ready to give up his world record anytime soon. He started grinding for better times. Same time, the exact same time. Feeling comfortably in the lead, Cube took a break after these runs, with his next goal being sub 18 seconds. However, his break was cut short and SpiderXE got an 18 of his own. Not 1 hour later, Cube got this run, while in a call with SpiderXE.
Oh, yeah. Do you tap when you're on the ledge to get to the Hold on. Yes.
Another second barrier broken, with no new strategies found either, just pure optimization of the route. While Cube's HS2 setup seemingly got faster with each run, it was still just a little slower than SpiderXE's setup, but he made up that time with all-around faster movement. SpiderXE would quickly close the gap between their movement, however, getting an 18:48 a few days later, and an 18:34 on the same night. At this point, both Cube and SpiderXE had a bit of a cult following. They would often open public lobbies and have people watch them do runs together, and try to compete against them. Masked Cube would incrementally improve his run over the next few months, to a 1787 and then a 1784, with SpiderXE famously PBing at almost the exact same time. This run used a new HS2 method Cube developed, which he called setupless. It was inspired by SpiderXE's infamously fast setups and involved aiming for a certain part of the circle on the 10th checkpoint so that HS2 could be performed instantly with no setup. This saved between 0.3 and 0.7 seconds, depending on how slow your setup would have been. But even with this massive optimization, Cube struggled to make significant PBs, and SpiderXE was slowly but surely catching up to him, until finally, on July of 2018, while in a call with Masked Cube, he did this.
Speaking of gym, early morning gym sesh. You got, oh shit, dude, that's fucking, dude, beat me. That's so good.
Even with the slow setupless, SpiderXE had set a new world record, and dethroned Masked Cube by 0.05 seconds, partly thanks to an extremely fast beginning. At this point, many called Masked Cube washed up and believed SpiderXE would be the new frontrunner for years to come, especially when he got a 17:57 straight after.
What the fuck? What?
Realizing he had gotten lazy, Masked Cube started grinding again, doing runs for hours on end. Within a day, he got a 1760, within 0.03 seconds of the record, and 2 days later, he got this run. Finally, Cube was back in the game, although not comfortably. They both kept doing runs, with SpiderXE taking the record back with a 1742 and Cube quickly retaliating with a 1739. They traded the record back and forth a few more times, using a new ending strat found by SpiderXE that punched into a wooden plank that was right on the edge of the final checkpoint, saving around 0.3 seconds. Eventually, SpiderXE had a 1714 and Masked Cube had a 1726. A sub 17 second run was starting to look feasible, and it looked like SpiderXE would be the one to get it. That was until Masked Cube came out with this run.
I just need a good run.
So painful. Oh my god.
If you're a good run, you literally beat me. Easy.
Mate.
No. Come on, think about it.
It's so hard to get up.
Bye. That's good enough.
Shit.
An insane run. 0.03 seconds off being a sub 17. It was only a matter of time. And not 1 hour later, it happened. Pretty much everyone, including Mosscube and Spidexy, agreed that this would be the last second barrier broken. Some Tazzers put together an ideal run for level 1, playing to what they claimed to be human perfection, and this run achieved a 1662, so with current strats, sub 17 would certainly be the last second barrier broken. But Mosscube and Spidexy had a different goal. They wanted to beat the Taz. They wanted a sub 1662. With a new trick developed by Speedrunning called Boxless, which involves slamming onto the barrel under the boxes on the last checkpoint, saving about 0.1 seconds, they got to work, optimizing each checkpoint as much as they could.
So fun. Oh, so funny.
Ethan, I liked it.
That comedy.
Thank you, that makes me so good.
Ethan, you should have played at Comedy Central.
Hey, Will, give me a fucking gift back. Will, I lost some fucking balls and I walked in there.
I did it.
Yeah, no. I can't mine anymore. Start. Oh, nice.
My game
Yeah,
lag.
one more level.
Everybody was doing parkour on the fucking school. It is so true though, Lewis, like finding every optimization, doing all this, doing all that, and then the school is just like, oh yeah.
Every optimization is the same. Swear I never even flew for these things because we're gonna deduct the next one.
16.88.
Oh.
I feel like there is an optimization for the tree path.
There we go.
Oh shit.
Okay, barrel.
Did you get barrel with that?
Yeah, barrel.
What was your last time?
15.22.
See, that barrel is fast. Oh.
Wait, like 2 seconds.
Oh, like you missed the end.
Yeah. I hit the boat, but I didn't go on top of the boat. It's tragic. Left front as well. See, like, I can get this.
Oh, epic. Oh, I might have to leave and recharge. At least I'll feel good about getting into it first. Alright, this is it. This is the 16.6 run.
Lewis?
Oh, fucking nice.
Go!
Record.
Record. Wait, I can't record. How do you do it? Thank God. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. Thank you, Jesus.
Fucking times, man. Oh shit, dude.
How
A 1664, a legendary run. 0.02 seconds off the Taz. Spidex was on another level, playing nearly perfectly. It seemed like Maskcube had once again lost his touch, until, out of nowhere, he did this.
Oh yes, I equaled.
my God.
He'd done it. He had equaled the Taz. Thanks to Boxless, he only needed to play within 0.1 seconds of human perfection, but it was still very impressive. After this, both Spidexy and Maskcube took a short break, as the run was so optimized at this point it was very easy to burn out. About a month later, in February of 2019, Maskcube was grinding again, trying to beat the 1662 mark, when this happened.
Oh my god.
He had accidentally skipped the uppercut used in the second checkpoint, slamming up the rocky slope and saving between 0.3 and 0.4 seconds. This was huge. After analysing the clip and replicating the inputs, Cube found that the strat was quite consistent, although very precise, and after a lot of practice he was able to hit it most of the time. He called the trick Slope Slam, and began incorporating it into runs. It only took a few hours before he came out with this run. The Taz run had now officially been beaten by a human, and by a full 0.2 seconds. Maskcube kept doing runs and got a 1635, then a 1627 a few days later. Spidexy returned after Cube's 1640 and got a sub 1662 of his own, but stopped playing shortly after, as he struggled learning a consistent setup for Slope Slam and was resetting runs too often. After Cube got his 1627, he took a break as well, as the run was once again so optimized barely any more time could be saved. Despite everything, sub 16 seconds was still barely out of reach. It would almost be a full year before Spidexy and Maskcube would return, in January of 2020. After some advice from Cube, Spidexy was finally able to get good at Slope Slam, and slowly caught up to Cube. They knew they had to find a new strat to save any considerable amount of time from Maskcube's 1627, so in addition to doing runs, they started looking for improvements to the route. On January 29th, 2020, they found an improvement to Boxless, which got rid of the fully charged punch to the final checkpoint and replaced it with a jump punch. This saved about 0.3 seconds, which was huge and meant a 15.9x was now possible. Maskcube and Spidexy traded world record back and forth, getting closer and closer to the sub 16. Spidexy refused to record any more runs until he got the sub 16, so there isn't any videos of his runs between this point, but Cube verifies they are essentially neck and neck. After getting a 1610, however, Maskcube started to have trouble with HS2's setup list and barely got any runs going, while Spidexy kept improving his time, getting runs less than 0.05 seconds off a sub 16. And then, on February 27th, 2020, he did this.
did.
The first second barrier Spidexy had broken, and it was the most important one of all. Despite Spidexy being essentially on par with Mask Cube for a long time, Cube was always the one to narrowly steal the glory by breaking second barriers, but not this time. Spidexy claimed the first ever 15xx, without a doubt the final second barrier to ever be broken. After this, Spidexy would improve his time to a 1592, and Cube would finally get a 15 of his own a week later. Not long after, they both stopped playing, seemingly for good. Nearly 2 years later, on December 23rd, 2021, a Reddit thread would appear in the Doomfist Parkour subreddit, asking about Spidexy and Mask Cube, and why no one ran Blizzard World Level 1 anymore. A well-known Tazza known as RDC218 would reply to this thread, saying, "They both stopped playing after getting 15.9x because that is quite literally the last milestone. Even 15.8x is not humanly possible. I made a Taz for the level that sits at 15.9 flat." The comment got quite a bit of popularity, with most people agreeing that 15.8x was not possible. Mask Cube, being an avid Reddit user, stumbled across this post and decided to come back to the level for one last hurrah. His goal? A 15.8x. He did runs for multiple days, but couldn't even crack a 15.9x. It was beginning to seem hopeless. But after he got a 1598, he suddenly seemed a lot more confident. Finally, after a whole week of runs, this happened. Doomfist Parkour Blizzard World Level 1 is the most infamous Doom Parkour speedrun level for a reason. Many other maps have been speedrun, some even by Cube and Spidexy, and while many of them involve the same fast-paced gameplay and entertaining runs as Blizzard World, none of them can match the complexity, tricks, or history of this iconic level.